This is Metal Mike, and in this episode I'm joined by fellow Yngwie nut Chris, and we talk through our top 7 favorite Yngwie Malmsteen albums. Now, Yngwie is definitely a one-of-a-kind guitarist. He's made so many cool albums, and he's played with so many amazing musicians, and we talk through it all. Now, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, and consider being a financial subscriber through Anchor. There's a link in the description below. And hey, if you really like how things are going on the podcast, make sure you share and tell your friends. And we'll make this thing bigger than Yngwie's ego. Oh, that was bad, right? Well, hey, I've interviewed many of Yngwie's past bandmates. Now go back through my channel and check out those interviews, and we sprinkle in some clips from those along the way. Now, some of these classics you might not remember, but we'll never forget. Check it out!
Chris, welcome to the 80's Glam Metalcast, man. How are you?
Great. Happy to be here. It's always a great day when you can talk about the maestro, right?
Yngwie's one of those things, man. Not everybody knows who Yngwie is, but, for those that don't, they're missing out, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. He's the most unknown superstar you could ever see. The guy invented a genre all to himself as one of the biggest stars in the guitar playing community, yet you could go down the street and find people who have no idea who he is. It's truly an amazing double-edged sword he has there.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. But, he's done so many killer albums, so many great songs, and we're going to go through a top 7 here tonight. But, Chris, tell everybody what you do, man. You're a moderator on the KISS FAQ board. That's how we got to know each other. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, a big KISS fan. That was my first love. I was 5 years old when I bought Alive 2, and KISS have been there for my entire life. And KISS FAQ board is a really great place, really great KISS community. And, I've been a moderator there for many years now, and I use the name Rising Force. That's my handle there. So I've always thrown my tribute to Yngwie just about anywhere I go. But for KISS fans out there, KISS FAQ is the place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I encourage everybody to go on there. Mine's really simple. I'm Metal Mike on there, and I post a lot about the podcast and different things that I do. But I love jumping in on other people's discussions too, because we're all we're KISS fanatics. We're Yngwie fanatics. We're 80's metal fanatics. We're a rare breed, and we all kind of need to stick together, right?
Well, it's great to see people who've held on to that, because that was all the scene and it was all the rage at the time. And many people have moved on, but I can tell you those bands are still my favorite today.
Yep.
Whether it's Yngwie putting something new out or any of his related vocalists or band members, but even other bands in the genre, you name it, Danger Danger and anything like that, I still love, and I'll get anything that those guys get.
Super, man. I feel the same exact way. Well, hey, without further ado, I say we jump right in. Why don't you give me what your number 7 is on your top Yngwie album list?
All right. Well, number 7, I'm going to go with Unleash the Fury. It's odd to say that that's a later day album. You think of it as more contemporary, but that's an old one now.
It is,
when
right.
You think about it. But it really walks that fine line of, as he's gotten older and has progressed, he's really turned up the speed and making the soloing a part of every song, kind of at the sacrifice of melody and vocals and song structure, But that didn't happen on Unleash the Fury. That one is power-packed with songs, And that's just one that I have loved since it first came out. And it's really probably what I would say maybe his last really, truly great album.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It probably is one of the last really great ones. And what's weird is I really wanted to love the Tim Ripper Owen albums, but I didn't really like them for some reason. And I think what I really wanted, which this doesn't make any sense, but this is how my brain works, I wanted to hear Tim Owens do kind of the more commercial Yngwie stuff. I think it would have worked, but instead they kind of went let's go as metal as we possibly can. And I just don't know if the songs were there on those ones. You know what I mean?
Perpetual Flame walked that fine line. He still tried to have some strong structure. It wasn't overdoing the solos, to the point where it is today. It tried to walk that fine line, but I agree. It went a little too much to that side. And then you have, the follow-up album, which, Ripper technically sang on, but it was just leftover tracks, so it's really tough to,
right. It's not like
even,
a real
count that one. But really, it was a good era. I liked him with the band, and actually that's really the last time that Yngwie had a really legit singer.
Yeah.
And one of the criticisms of him today is, he's singing himself, he's being cheap. I like when Yngwie sings. We'll get to other albums later, but when Seventh Sign came out and I heard Angel and Heat for the first time, oh my God. I loved having that oddity of him singing. Now him singing every song, I don't mind it. but it's only like 4 or 5 songs an album. It's overloaded with instrumentals. But it would be nice to see him go back and get that style of vocalist again.
Yeah, and a couple things, my thoughts on Unleash the Fury. First of all, I think it's too long. I think it's got too many songs for me. But I dig Doogie's voice, man. And my favorite song on there is Russian Roulette. So, Yngwie fans, if you're not familiar with this album, that's the song that I really love. That's my favorite. I like a lot of the other ones. I like Winds of War. And one other thing, just the last thing I want to say about Doogie White is if you go back to the album before, Attack, one of my all-time favorite Yngwie songs is Touch the Sky. I love that song, you know. That song reminds me of, like, Trilogy days with the 80's keyboards and everything. So check out Touch the Sky and Russian Roulette. Those are standouts for me from the Doogie era. Are there some songs, Chris, that really stand out to you that are like, man, I just love these songs from this era?
I mean, from the Doogie era, I mean, my God, Razor Eater, which was awesome. I was front row one night. I've told a story before. I'll probably get to it in a bit, but I was front row one night, and Doogie gave me the mic, and I got to sing the chorus of Razor Eater, and it was just awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know? But that was the same night that George Lynch opened, and Lynch had the skeleton guitar, the Dream Warriors one, and he was really upset with his sound guy that night, and he, at the end of the show, he just threw his hands up. I can't get my sound to work. He just gave the guitar to me in the front row. And I was like, whoa, holy mackerel. And his sound guy came running with the look of God in his face, saying, please, I have to have that back. And I should have made my way out the door, and I would have George's. But this is not a show about George, it's more about anything. We'll get back to that. But the Doogie era, I really enjoyed the Doogie era a lot. And again, I got to meet him after the show. Really nice guy. I thought that was another instance where, yeah, you hear he's just ripping off Rainbow. You know, you'd always hear that he's pilfering all the Richie stuff. But he was a great fit for the band. I love Doogie.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm with you. My number 7 is something different than what you have. I put Facing the Animal at 7. I really dig this album. You know, I feel like this is one, it's like kind of poppy in places, but it still has like a heavy, more modern, at least for the time, production. Cozy Powell, you know, R.I.P. Great drumming on there. And I love Matt Levin's voice because I feel like, and we'll get to this later, is that I'm really big into Mike Vescera. I was big into Loudness, and I was really excited when Mike got in the band. So I was a little skeptical. There's certain times where like a singer that I've been really into would leave, and then I was kind of worried, like, oh God, who's going to be in next? Am I going to like what they're doing? But Matt's was awesome, man. And a couple things about this one that I thought was cool is that some of these songs. This is what Matt's told me, is that some of them were left over from the Odyssey era. And I love Odyssey, and I thought some of those, you know, big choruses and songs like Another Time and Alone in Paradise were really cool, really catchy. That's the kind, for me, I got to be honest, that's the kind of Yngwie stuff that I like. I really do like when Yngwie kind of commercializes his sound a little bit. And yeah, I love that. I love that album. And then some of the heaviest stuff is really cool too, like Heathens from the North and My Resurrection. So just a good mix of music on there.
Agree totally. And jumping the gun, I can get to Facing the Animal now because that's my number 6.
Ah, perfect,
that's on the list for me, coincidentally. So, and again, this goes back to he's playing like a beast, but he's doing it within the confines of the song. You know, It's not over ripping the instrumental aspect of it. It's not just soloing for the sense of soloing. It's track after track, and that album is just pure killer. I mean, you speak about like Another Time. I remember when that album was first being solicited, it was titled Another Time on the pre-order advances.
Oh, was it?
And yeah, I remember when I first pre-ordered it. This is back in the days of like CD Now. Oh my God, I'm dating myself. But at the time, it was listed as Another Time. And but yeah, you know, track Facing the Animal is the standout track for me on that one. I love that. You know,
me too.
The guy's just a beast when he's reined in. You know,
yes.
That sounds like I'm making a negative when I'm really not, but it's good when he's focused and he's saying, let's make a great song and then throw my stamp onto it.
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
And that album did it in spades. Matt's is awesome. Loved him in the band. I mean, he's great in the other stuff. I have other albums of his outside of Yngwie. Great singer. Great album. Love that whole era. The live album they put out together is great. Live in Brazil. Awesome stuff.
Well, I've interviewed a lot of these guys, so let's play a little clip of what Matt thinks of his time doing Facing the Animal. My number 6 is Fire and Ice, and people really, a lot of people love Eclipse, and I got to be honest, after Odyssey, Eclipse for me was a bit of a letdown, and I think because who knows? I'm sure we're going to talk about Odyssey later on, but for me, Odyssey was just so good. The production, the songs, the singing, it was just so spot on. And I really wanted another Lynn Turner album. Obviously, that did not happen, and I just think the sound for me was a little thin on Eclipse. I don't know if the songs were really there. I don't know if I was totally on board with Goran Edman, first time, getting into that album. So for me, Eclipse was a little bit of a letdown. But I thought that Fire and Ice was a nice rebound. I feel like, okay, now I've come to terms with Lynn Turner not being in the band anymore. I've come down off of my depression of the singer change. And no, I really love that album. I think the production was great. The songs were better. And I dig all he's got Teaser, which I call it's like his, I don't even know what you want to call it, like a cheesy pop metal tune, but it's cool. And there's some really interesting tunes on there. How Many Miles to Babylon, Final Curtain, No Mercy, I'm My Own Enemy, and I just think it's great, man. I think that was a big step up for me from Eclipse. But a lot of people swear by Eclipse. What do you think?
Well, I got to tell you, and this is funny how this is working out because Fire and Ice is my number 5. Let's continue to be working our way out.
We're staggering them. We're staggering them.
I'm telling you, it's going to look like this was set up, but it's the way that it all happens to work out. But to tell you how much I just love Fire, everything about that album is perfect. For music, obviously, is what it is. But man, you throw in the packaging, cover art, everything about that entire era. I love.
Yep.
That's like senior year of college for me. I'm moving on. I saw him on that tour. God, I remember to this day in the Trade Winds in New Jersey club. And hearing Forever is a long time. Fire and Ice, hearing those songs live, just awesome. He opened with Perpetual.
Oh, nice.
Amazing stuff. Great era. Love that band, and I agree that, and I'm spoiling, but Eclipse isn't on my list either.
Yeah.
And it's one that I don't dislike, but the second time around with that lineup, they really hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
It was like, Eclipse had its moments. You have the 3 singles and the videos, and those are good, but, it's still a great album on its own, but when compared to the others, I rank it a notch below, but Fire and Ice is just so awesome. I mean, I remember hunting for years trying to find the promotional poster of I guess from the teaser single where he's holding the guitar over his head with the flames.
Yeah.
I got that, got him to sign it. Just great stuff. And I love that album, that whole era. And you're right, a lot of those songs, and this is one of the nitpicky things about his shows these days, is that albums like that are forgotten.
Yeah.
You're never going to hear him play Fire and Ice again. You're never going to hear Dragonfly. Those things are just out the window, and those are sorely missed.
Yeah, and you made a great point about the cover because just by seeing that cover, you wanted to buy that. You know what I mean? And it was cool. He was on Elektra, so he was still on a major label, even though he wasn't on Polygram anymore. A lot of artists, and he's about to go down that wormhole where he's not on a major label either. But a lot of artists kind of lost their major label deals around this time, and he still had it. But yeah, that cover is just killer, stellar.
So glad you mentioned that too, because I remember thinking at the time. And we all know, those of us who lived through it know what that era was like and where the musical landscape was going. And you're right, bands were losing deals left and right. But I remember finding out, oh my God, he's on Elektra now. Holy mackerel, he's making a step up.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, and you're like, wow, but the whole package was just so well put together. Great album. And it was really good to see that lineup solidify after a first good album, but just completely knocking it out of the park on the sophomore.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like a cheese ball. Oh, I got to talk to Goran Edman, but I did speak with Goran Edman, and he did talk to me about this album, and I'll roll that clip right here. Okay, so I guess it's time for me to do my 5, and this is where I put Marching Out. And a lot of people might be surprised at that. I think it's a great album. This is a straight up metal album. There's this. The blues haven't infiltrated Yngwie's sound pretty much. Yet with this album. And Jeff Scott Soto, man, killer vocalist. Obviously, these are live staples, to this day. I'll See the Light Tonight, Don't Let It End, I Am a Viking. One song that stands out to me that I really like, but it doesn't sound very Yngwie-ish, is On the Run. I always feel like the beginning of On the Run sounds like it could be like any LA 80s band, you know what I mean? It's got like that, like a rat almost riff, but it's really cool, and it does fit. So, it's a great album. I just feel like I kind of liked where he went as he, kept going. I felt like, and maybe that's just the kind of music that I like, but the more commercial he got, I feel like I liked it even more. But, it's a solid outing.
It is, and it's truly amazing how this works out because, again, I'm going to piggyback off you because Marching Out was my number 4. and again, that era, that's where I really got into him at first. I mean, I'd heard the name before. Again, now remember, I was born in 72. So when the first album came out and, the days with Alcatraz and Steeler and all that beforehand, I'd heard the name, but I really didn't get into it. It was seeing the I'll See the Light Tonight video on Headbangers Ball. And I was like, wow, this guy's a monster. I ran out and got the entire back catalog at that point. That whole era, and you want to throw in the Live 85 video, which is technically from a show before the album came out, but it's that era. There's so much material from it on there. What a great era. And by the way, the CD of Live 85 came out unofficially recently, and I did pick that up. Great disc.
Oh, nice.
But the Jeff era, I love that band with Anders and Jens. That's just great stuff. Great stuff. And what an album. It's picking up from the debut, which was, all instrumental save 2. But now he's making a full band album. Jeff is really coming across more as not just, here's a guy I hired to do a couple songs.
Right.
He's a band member.
Yeah.
And they really, really killed it. What a great, pseudo debut when you figure that's really where he was sort of really catching notice, and becoming a little more mainstream.
Yeah, 100%. When I talked with Anders, it was weird. I kind of asked him, I was like, who do you think is was the right singer? Or who did you like working with the best out of all the ones? And he mentioned Jeff. And actually, this would be a great spot to kind of roll that clip.
Well, there was a lot of in and out during that era because he left, Mark came in, Mark left, Jeff came back again for a tour, even though he wasn't really back. It was a lot of back and forth during that time. And then, of course, he came back later for inspiration and does little things. And now I can't imagine that ever happening. I had a chance to talk to Jeff a couple years ago. And all thoughts of ever working together again just seemed to be completely out the window. But it would be nice if both parties could ever put it together and just say, hey, let's put aside personal differences, just worry about making some music.
I know. It's weird because any vocalist that I ever talked to really didn't act like they could ever work with them again for the most part. You know what I mean? Most of them were like that. So it's too bad because they all make great music together. All the different singers with their touch of their lyrics and everything, it really made some great stuff. All right. So number 4, I've got Magnum Opus. And as I was alluding to earlier, I'm a huge Mike Vescera fan. I'm going to hold off. There's more stuff I want to say about Mike Vescera, but I'm going to hold off because there may be another one that, from his era that'll hit the list. So I'll just talk about the album itself. I think it's great. What I did talk with Mike, he said that this album was more of a rush, and he doesn't know if it was, as a spontaneous and as original as the Seventh Sign. But I think there's some great. I think it rivals it. There's some great stuff. I love No Love Lost. There's a lot of cool. Another one, for example, we talked about some of those songs that don't sound very Yngwie-ish, and I think Cross the Line is another one of those songs where it sounds like your typical 80s song, even though it's 1995. Tomorrow's Gone kind of has that slow neoclassical heavy thing going on. The Only One reminds me of Teaser. It's kind of like that catchy, metal track. So a lot of cool stuff on there. And once again, I just think it's just a great pairing, those two. What do you think with Vescera's era?
That's a solid album. And the Vescera album, that's one where I'll rank Seventh Sign a little higher than that one.
Yeah.
But, and you're right, Magnum Opus kind of comes off as, here's just part 2.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I heard him, okay, it kicks in with vengeance, and you're like, well, okay, this is kind of like picking up from where the Seventh Sign left off, and and it's a good album. It's one that you're right though, it just didn't feel like it had that same magic. I mean, and now again, I'm a big bootleg freak, so Live at Budokan from Seventh Sign tour is amazing, and then you look around and I go to the Japan tour for Magnum Opus, and it's missing a little something for me. But still, all in all, great album. He had a solid band at that point, really good stuff. Fire in the Sky, underrated track, never gets talked about.
It is a good
track.
track.
Really, really a good, solid era from him.
Yeah, Voodoo is really cool too. I forgot to mention Voodoo. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got for 3, man?
Number 3. Now we're hitting the big stuff. So now, Trilogy. I mean, that's funny how that works out. I didn't even plan that, but Trilogy 3, how do you like that? That just hit me that I did that, and I didn't even notice. But again, now you're talking, Marching Out had done its thing, and now this is the slightly more attempt to go a little more mainstream.
Yeah.
You Don't Remember, I'll Never Forget is, that's of course the hit single, quote unquote. But that was the one with the MTV push, and the one that they did that really tried to get the album its push. But boy, you give me stuff like Fury, and oh my God, amazing album. Really, a point where he was starting to get, you would think that this is where he could start to break through.
Yeah.
You know, because you're seeing, now he's not relegated to Headbangers Ball or whatever the nighttime thing. He's being played during the day on MTV, and I'm seeing him in the middle of the afternoon. And you can see that maybe he's about to break, and it just never went over the cliff. But that was the point where you could see it going a little more mainstream. But, again, soloing within the song, you know, and it's just, you know, now, of course, Trilogy Suite, oh my God, you know. But to go back to the songs on it, Queen in Love, and you start with Queen in Love and Liar, and this goes back to what I said before about the live shows. How are these songs not being played anymore? As those just should be standards at any time he plays. I just saw him a few months ago, and I knew what to expect because I know he doesn't even have a real singer with him at this point.
No.
But you're like, my God, some of these older classic songs, and even the Middle of the Road from the Magnum Opus era, isn't it? Just forgotten, and you wish that you would see some of that get its due.
Yep.
But Trilogy is going to be the standard bearer pretty much for, you know, you look at that era and people are going to look at that and be like, oh, okay, here's where the image was coming together and the whole package with the songs. Just great stuff. Awesome era from him.
Well, strangely enough, Trilogy's my number 3. People are going to think we planned this. Well, we didn't. Yeah, I mean, everything you said is exactly what I think. And, you know, let's just do a shout out to Mark Bowles. I mean, incredible vocals, and it totally fits, and it sounds great. And like I've said, I like when Yngwie goes the pop metal route. And You Don't Remember, I'll never forget, is arguably his best song. Most people would probably say that, if, you know, in a commercial standpoint, being known, being accessible, you know, this is the song. But you made a great point about the live tracks, you know, doing Queen is in Love and Liar and all that kind of stuff. And it really stands out to me, like when they do Live in Leningrad, even though it's Lynn Turner singing it, you know, those songs, when they go back to back with a lot of those tracks from Trilogy, it sounds so good. You know, just songs that should be in the live show all the time. And you mentioned Fury. I love that one. Fire, man. Fire could have been a hit. That's a catchy tune. And I don't know what it is, but I'm a sucker for Dark Ages. I just like Dark Ages. I don't know why, but I do like that one, man. But it's like I said, it's a great album. I think I'm going to talk more down the road of why I think maybe Yngwie just never crossed over. But you're right. This should have been the point where he did. So,
and it's weird when you think of where the era was going at that point as the other acts are exploding, you know, and MTV is making or breaking bands. You're seeing, you know, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, all these bands are now skyrocketing. You know, Kiss, who are really, let's be honest, a dinosaur act at that point, are getting a second life with Heaven's on Fire, and they're being played on MTV.
Exactly.
This is the point where that whole genre was in fashion, and you really would have thought that was the point, because again, he wasn't overdoing it yet. It was still confined with songs. You couldn't call him that musical snob kind of fan, you know, where you'd be like, oh, it's only those guitar geeks who are into him. He was still doing it for songs, and that whole era really encapsulated, really should have pushed him further.
Yeah. Well, we're getting down to the final 2, man. What's your number 2?
2, I'm going where it began. Solo, of course, with the Rising Force. I purposely left Steeler and Alcatraz out of this. I wanted to stick with just him.
Right. Yep.
But you start with the Rising Force album, and it's just undeniable. I mean, again, this is kind of going against what I said earlier, since it's almost all instrumental, but this was really an introduction to him, you know, as his name is getting out there more as just, oh, who's that guy who's in this Alcatraz band I saw who's not really getting his name out there. But now you're seeing him for the first time, and he just puts out a complete masterpiece. And you're talking about song, again, it's instrumental, except for 2 tracks, but still, it's confined in a song and an instrumental that's going somewhere, not just kind of noodling throughout every second of the song, which is, and again, I think today, he sacrifices that melody just for speed on track after track after track. And I readily admit, even as big a fan as I am, you know, I can listen to Parabellum now, and track to track, I'll have a hard time sometimes identifying, okay, if he just played it to me on random,
which one is this?
What is this from? Because there's a kind of a sameness to it. But at that point, every instrumental even was unique. It built upon where it was going. Again, Far Beyond the Sun, Black Stars are standards he'll play for the rest of his life.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because, you know, those are never going out of the set, nor should they, you know, because those are what he's built his solo career on. Just amazing album start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have this on my list, and it goes back to probably what I've already said, is that I do like the songs better than the soloing. But you're right, stuff like Black Star and different songs on there, there's a point to what's going on, and there is some melody there. It's not just flying around on the fretboard. So I respect that album. It's just not an album that I go back to very often, but I really, it's the springboard of his career, what got him going and got his. Got him known as being a guitar god. So, it's definitely a great album. But my number 2, we're going back to the Mike Vescera era, is the Seventh Sign, man. And I love this album. And I just got to say, I was so stoked that these guys were combining forces. So let's set the stage. It's 1994. Metal is not being carried much anymore on MTV. It's not in magazines much anymore. You don't know what the hell's going on with your favorite artists. Just like you said, you were looking in a magazine, and that's how you found out, like a publication that, Yngwie's got a new album out. I remember going into independent record stores, and they would show release dates, right? And they would show, like, Yngwie Malmsteen, Seventh Sign. So this was the only way, right? Go on some whiteboard in an independent music store that I knew Yngwie even had a new album, okay? This is pre-internet. And I had no idea that Mike Vescera was even in the band, because once again, how would I? You know what I mean? How would I know what he's up to?
Right.
I loved Loudness. I loved Soldier of Fortune and On the Prowl. Thought he was amazing. That ended. He dropped off the face of the earth. I had no idea what was going on. So I was so stoked when I got that CD and I took it home and I opened it up and I saw Mike Vescera lead vocals, man. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I didn't know if Goran Edman was going to be, on the next album. I had no idea. But I just love it, man. I think, and honestly, for me, I think there were some improvements over the Goran Edman era. Never Die, I don't know, such a cool, like, bluesy attitude track. Seventh Sign, I mean, that's one of his greatest songs, in my opinion. He still plays that to this day, right? That's still in his set. I've seen him play that on YouTube and whatnot. And then Prisoner of Your Love. Some of these Yngwie ballads are sometimes can be kind of corny, but I like that one. And the main reason I like it, because it harkens back to some of the Mike Vescera stuff, like Lost Without Your Love on the Soldier of Fortune album. So I feel like that was such an awesome pairing. I just really dig that era. Once again, I'm a Mike Vescera nut. I've got tons of albums that he's done, outside of the band. What'd you think of Seventh Sign?
It's funny, thinking about that era, and we were just talking about the jump from Polygram to Elektra, and I remember during the pre-release info for Seventh Sign, I was like, okay, he's on CMC now.
Oh, yes, that's where all bands go to die.
I was like, uh-oh, you're fresh off Elektra, and now you're on to CMC. What happened? So I remember, and I was one of those who kind of held off on CDs. I was really, really stubborn. I wanted to stick to vinyl, which was impossible. So I remember getting the cassette for the Seventh Sign when that came out, and again, you see CMC, like, okay, we're going to have a step down in quality, and boom, what a punch. That it Never Die kicks out right from the beginning, like you mentioned, I Don't Know. Hair Trigger, oh my God, he's really got some aggression. Yeah, just really took me by surprise, because I wasn't expecting, but that was the first time that I really noticed that he was really going for the, okay, let's go for lightning fast.
Yep.
He's still confined to the songs, but he was really pushing the speed on that album. I thought really the first time, to some degree to the hindrance of melody, but still wrapped up in good songs, great era, saw him multiple times on those 2 tours. Great stuff.
Yeah, and I'm going to roll a clip of when I talked with Vescera. He thought it was very easy and comfortable to work with Yngwie, and here's the clip on that. I already know that we have the same number 1. All right, man, what's your number 1?
All right, number 1 is such a cakewalk, easy decision for me. You were mentioning before about amazing combinations, and this was just, what a star-crossed for me, because you have Yngwie's my favorite guitarist of all time, and now you throw in Lynn Turner, my favorite vocalist ever. I love Lynn Turner. Not just Rainbow, his solo stuff, his Deep Purple era, I don't care what anybody says, it's my favorite Deep Purple album. I love Lynn Turner.
Me too.
And I really thought that was the perfect merging of melody and, restraint in his playing. It's still undeniably Yngwie. But again, you can see Lynn Turner's fingerprints all over that album, not just on the vocals, but you look at, there's never been another lyrical album quite like that. Joe always talks about how Richie Blackmore would say Joe has his magic bag of lyrics. And you can just see Joe's ingredients all over every song on that. And just, for me to have them together at that point was just amazing. And you throw in Trial by Fire live in Leningrad as well. Just awesome. Just, I love that era. You mentioned before having Joe singing Mark's tracks, just a perfect album for me. And there's so many tracks on there that really don't get their due. Again, that you'll never hear again. Riot in the Dungeon, Deja Vu, Crystal Ball. Oh my God. You know, for whatever reason, I don't know why Yngwie doesn't love Heaven Tonight. I get that it's poppy and he just doesn't play it anymore. And what can you do? I guess for some reason he's not a fan of that era. Him and Joe have their, little war of words from time to time. I had a chance to talk to Joe recently myself, and I was asking him about, I know that you guys aren't getting along, but boy, it was so awesome. And it's funny. He's like, oh, that's that guy. He was so dismissive about it because he said the whole reason for anything between us just makes no sense. It's a perfect that we just meshed so well together. And created what's, again, what I consider easily his best album.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Yngwie chooses to distance himself from it, which occasionally he'll play a little bit of Dreaming. Of course, he still plays Rising Force. I mean, that's just almost a theme. It's a given that it's his opening track from here on out. But it's just an amazing, amazing album. And for me, I just couldn't ask anymore. I mean, at the time, my mind was blown. I'm like, holy cow, like you had mentioned with Mike, like, oh my God, Joe and Yngwie together. This is just unbelievable. And, as someone who loves, Joe was coming off his solo album, his Rescue You era, and that's poppy and kind of light. And you're like, oh my God, yes, now he's back in Yngwie, and holy cow, is Joe rocking again. This is just amazing stuff. And I can't say enough about that album. Just top to bottom, absolute perfection. The peak of his career could never be topped.
Yeah. I love Odyssey too. It's my number one as well. And you're right, man. We talk about the pairings. This is the best one. It's the best songs that he's ever written. It's the coolest voice. You know what I mean? It's just everything. And, Heaven Tonight, as poppy as it is, obviously one of his biggest hits ever, one of his best songs. I love Now Is the Time. Rising Force, of course, like you said, it's classic. Crystal Ball. There's just so many good tunes, man. And here's where I want to drop this one. So we talked earlier about how did this guy not cross over? And I'm going to say this. I said this to Lynn Turner. He agreed with me. It's the name. The name Yngwie Malmsteen in the 1980s. We're in a superficial era. Let's face it. It's not marketable. And this is let me give it another example of how this can turn a different way. But this happened in the 90s with Savatage, okay? You look at when Savatage released Christmas Eve Sarajevo, it was like, whatever, no one really cared. When they turned it around, released the same song under the name Trans-Siberian Orchestra, it becomes a mega hit. All the guys in Savatage are now in Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and it's touring around Christmas, and it's making all kinds of money. So sometimes it's the name. And Joe said that there was a plan to make more of a band type of a thing. It was going to be him, Eric Singer, Yngwie, and Bob Daisley. This is what Joe says, okay? And Yngwie was like, I'm not having any part of this. He wants Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force. And I believe right there, if this is exactly if it went down the way Joe said, I think Yngwie shot himself in the foot right there. And I think this was the time, speaking of now is the time, 1988, if you were going to cash in, right, you were talking about in the 80s, like Yngwie is 80s, right? This was the last chance. Because we knew, like we talked about, what was around the corner. 90, 91, it was over. Guys like Yngwie, dude, there was no more. Kurt Cobain was the new guitar hero. You know what I mean? There were no more solos and songs or everything. So I feel like Yngwie really blew his big chance with this album because he could have repackaged it. His name would still be out there. He would be known as the lead guitarist for like this band or whatever it is. Could have just called it Rising Force. But I just think with his name attached, it's just confusing. How do I pronounce it? It doesn't sound American. Whatever it is, like I said, it's a superficial era. I think you got to play the game to win. And I feel like this was it. Once you don't do it with this one, it was over.
Yeah, I guess it can be tough. If you could have the greatest album with the best hype, and as soon as the marketing man drops it off at your local radio station, they go, I don't even know how to say this guy's name. How am I going to talk about
right,
this when I play it?
Yeah.
So I could see that. And I always thought Rising Force was a cool name. I remember when Trilogy came out, I'm like, oh, why'd you drop the name?
Yeah.
Why is it just him solo now? And then when he brought it back for Odyssey, I'm like, oh, okay, 'cause again, it made me feel like the band mattered.
Yeah.
You know, and that it wasn't just this one-man show. Sure, of course, he's the leader, and it's his show. You know, but the Odyssey lineup, I mean, you throw in, that's my favorite lineup, and again, I'm sure that's skewed by the era. It's skewed by having the Live in Leningrad DVD to go back to. By the way, if anyone doesn't have it, the Japanese DVD of Live in Leningrad is amazing. It's so crystal clear and beautiful. Go get it. And it's all region, too. So there's my plug for Live in Leningrad.
Are you getting paid to say this?
No, I wish. I'll take donations anytime, but the Maestro gets free press from me anytime, any day, because he's given me a lifetime of enjoyment, and this album especially. I mean, Odyssey, like I said, is just, he could put out an amazing album. There's no way it can ever be topped.
No.
And it's funny, too. Like I said, I was asking Joe about someday burying the hatchet if you guys ever do it again. He's like, you know, I guess we could, but could we ever top what that was then? Because it was lightning in a bottle. That was the era. Everything was in vogue at that point. Everybody's at their creative peak. Now, everyone's moved on, has done everything under the sun, you know, and for Yngwie himself, anything he does now is repeating himself. It's almost impossible for him to do anything, because he's done the instrumental discs. He's done the pop metal. He's done the harder. He's done the concerto. He's done an acoustic album. Where do you go? So it's impossible to, I know there's nothing new under the sun, but it's really true to say, where do you go? And that's why you hear the complaints now that the albums have a certain degree of sameness, especially with a lot of instrumentals now, no true lead vocalist.
Right.
That's the complaint you have now. But at that point in that time, you're right. That was the era where they really could have hit it big, and he had the perfect lineup to do it. And it's odd. It just petered out after Heaven Tonight. There was really no attempt, even though that was a quote-unquote hit.
Yep.
It really went nowhere after that.
No. I'm going to roll a clip really quick. This is what Joe thinks about his time with Yngwie and this album. Now, in this clip, he says that it's the best work that either of them have ever done, and I think most people agree with that. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And again, this is coming from the biased, slanted point of view of someone who loves them both and loves the things they've done. I mean, how many people out there have Joe's Mother's Army discs and all of the other little side things that he's done on the side? But I can absolutely say beyond a shadow of doubt, this is the highlight of both their careers.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, hey, man, this was fun talking about Yngwie with you. Like I said, we're in probably a small percentage in the United States who are Yngwie nuts, right? So where do you think he's going, man? Is he just going to keep doing the same kind of albums over and over again, or do you think there is a chance that he might, get a star vocalist down the road, or even if he did something like Inspiration again, where he brought in a bunch of different people and did something? What do you think? You think there's any chance he would do that?
I think something like that would be the best move that he could make, because, again, there's no shame in being a theater act at this point. For someone who's had a career this long, that's to be expected. You're not going to be playing arenas at this stage.
Right.
Unless he became a Trans-Siberian Orchestra guest, and started doing that. Which I always thought was something he could have done. I always thought that was something he could have done. I remember seeing, speaking of Joe, I remember seeing Joe doing a Christmas song in another country. I forgot where it was, but he was doing that kind of thing. He did the first Noel with a TSO-type band with the whole same stage show. And that was something, I've seen TSO so many times. I've always said, wow, they would be awesome in this. If he was focused and, again, doing it for the song and not, taking it as a way to do just a giant 2-hour solo.
Yeah.
But if he could put aside the thought, I know everybody hates lead singer disease, and I know he gets accused of that. People will say that, his wife is his manager and she wants certain people away from him. I don't buy into that.
Right.
He'll work with anybody he wants to. Just right now at this stage of his life, he's happy doing what he's doing, and I can't begrudge him that. He picks his band. He doesn't really have, Nick Marino has been singing, and it's a far cry from Joe and Turner. But it's not amateur hour, but it's a far cry from that. So I would love to see him put that thought aside now someday and say, let me get a vocalist, find somebody, a DC Cooper, somebody off the beaten path who has that kind of melodic kind of sense to it. And, not necessarily going back down the well of getting Joe or Mark or anybody like that back. That'd be great. But again, that's nostalgia, and I don't think he wants to go that road. I think he really sees himself as an artist going forward. So he would have to find that new kind of vocalist to do it, because doing the all or half instrumental albums is not going to push you to that next level again.
No.
He's just going to continue to be a theater act at that point.
Yeah.
But I would love to see him do something a little more mainstream next. It's been back-to-back albums now.
Yeah.
and touring cycles. They throw COVID in the middle. It's been a long stretch of sameness. So to see something with more of a, and again, how commercial is it? You know, pop metal, we talked about Facing the Animal and that kind of era. Even that's not popular, but you'd like to see something a little more accessible.
Yeah. You know, another thing that I think a lot crossed, at least my mind, especially as we got into the 90s, and now, unfortunately, there's no way this could ever happen, would be a pairing with him and Ronnie James Dio. I always thought, you know, if they did something, and I think they did a song before. Did they do a cover together?
They have Dream On. They did
Dream On.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think, you know, they probably would have made great music together. You know what I mean? They kind of have that same kind of mindset. There's the Rainbow Connection. They like to sing songs about dragons and stuff. So you know what I mean? It would have been
that whole mystical type connection. You could say that they have that whole fantasy meets rock kind of aspect going to them.
Yep.
Visually, they'd be an interesting pair together, and it would be interesting to see him go that road again, because really, Joe again was the first superstar singer he had, but to see him with someone with another even bigger name than his own, joining him for an album would really be something.
Yeah. But once again, you know, a lot of it probably on both sides of the fence on that one would be ego. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Whose name's going to be on it? You know what I mean? Could either of them say, we'll just call it, you know, some new name and not have our name on it? So I think that's the tough thing. I think that's the thing that Yngwie struggles with. So, you know, if he got an excellent offer today to be in a big group, I don't know if he would take it.
That's the thing. After so long of doing your own thing, and even if your appeal isn't what it had been years before, you're still used to that control and being your own boss and doing your own thing, following your vision. That's big for him. And I understand that. And I respect it that he's saying, forget commercialism. I'm not worried about that. I'm making what I want to make.
Yeah.
I respect it. But it would be nice to see him take that road and just be like, let's do one cycle and try something just to see how it goes. It doesn't mean you have to make it the rest of your career.
Right.
But give it a shot and do it as a side project and see what happens. Love to see it.
Yeah. See, that's, you know, and I've talked about this on the podcast before about other artists. You know, I think that's kind of where we're at with a lot of them right now. A lot of them just say, hey, you know, this is what we want to do. You know, we don't have any label pressure because we're on our own label and this is what we want. So here it is. It doesn't mean that's what the fans want, though. You know what I mean? And that's the hard part. You can have fun and you can follow your vision and do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, it costs money and people have to buy it. And if you're not, you know, if you're not doing what you're known for, what you love for, you could be in trouble. You know what I mean?
Well, that's just it. Again, like I said, I just saw him in November. And you look around and you're like, okay, you're in a 1,000-seater. Let's be realistic. Even if you're selling it out, you're still in a 1,000-seater. So, you know, it's one way to look to say, I got to try to find a way to reach my audience. Because, again, you're dealing with an older audience that he has.
Yep.
And with the way the show is now, again, relying on a lot of soloing, a lot of instrumental, I'll admit, I mean, I was in the third row when I saw him this time around, and you could see the older audience sitting down, not getting into it. But then You Don't Remember comes on. Hey, here we go. You know, and you see that more. But, you know, then Parabellum is getting played. You're like, okay, the people don't know it as much.
Right.
There's not that same enthusiasm, you know. But that's his direction, and that's where his focus is right now. I get it, but let's see what the future brings, because there's got to eventually be diminishing returns as, you know, album sales are declining for everybody, let alone for quote-unquote dinosaur rock acts.
Yep.
So you're going to have to do something that grabs attention, because you can't just rely on that steady fan base to continue to be there.
Yep, exactly. Well, my friend, this was awesome talking Yngwie with you.
No, this is great. And hey, I'm sure you know it's tough to find someone to talk Yngwie with. So it's been a blast, a true pleasure for me anytime.
All right, man. Well, I'm sure we'll be communicating on the KISS FAQ board. I recommend everybody get on there, do some posts, get into the conversation, because, man, there's so much stuff on there. It's a lot of fun. So thanks a lot, Chris.
Absolutely love it. Thank you very much. I appreciate being on.
All right, man.
Well, that was great talking some Yngwie with Chris. There's lots more episodes on the way, so get excited, become a subscriber, and you can rock on!